These are rappers who were never really scared of Suge Knight.
Number 1. Eminem. Suge Knight needs no introduction. He's the notorious rap mogul who used fear, intimidation, and violence to build Death Row Records into a powerhouse in the 1990s. Many rappers, both signed and unsigned, were afraid to cross him or stand up to him because of his reputation for violence and his connections to gangs. However, there were a few rappers who were never afraid of Suge Knight and never backed down from him. These rappers had the street rep stand up to Suge and his gang affiliations and talk smack even to his face. So let's start our list of rappers who were never really scared of Suge Knight with none other than Eminem. Eminem is a famous MC who rose to fame in the late 90s by taking shots at anyone who crossed him. His battle rap skills and fearless attitude made him a formidable opponent, even for someone like Suge Knight. In fact, after one of Eminem's friends accused Suge Knight to his face of being the man responsible for killing Tupac Shakur to his face, Eminem had the guts to stand up to Suge Knight and even make him back down. According to Tony Yayo in an interview, there was a day in the early 2000s at the height of Suge Knight's power when Eminem didn't back down even when Suge Knight brought a group of intimidating Mexican friends with him to a video shoot. Suge and his friends showed up, trying to intimidate the G-Unit crew, but Eminem stood his ground and even got in Suge's face, causing Suge to eventually back down. This shows that Eminem was never really scared of Suge Knight and had the courage to stand up to him, even at the peak of his power. Of course, Eminem wasn't the only one who stood up to Suge during the music video shoot. Number 2, 50 Cent. We all know 50 Cent as one of the most infamous rappers today, and his reputation for talking smack and standing up for himself is well known by now. In the early 2000s, 50 Cent was shooting his iconic music video for In Da Club when Suge Knight showed up with his crew, trying to intimidate the G-Unit rapper. However, 50 Cent was not intimidated and confronted Suge, asking him what he wanted to do. According to Bizarre, a rapper who was there at the time, Suge looked at 50 Cent and he took a puff of his cigar and he blew it out and he did like this and he left. Just some Ella type intimidation type. But while Suge was trying to intimidate 50 Cent, it didn't work. Fifth and his crew were more than willing to go face to face with the Suge Knight crew and even bought bulletproof vests and bulletproof cars and moved differently during that time. So it's safe to say 50 Cent was never really scared of Suge Knight either. Number 3, Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre is another rapper who wasn't afraid to stand up to Suge Knight. The two were close friends and business partners in the early days of Death Row Records. However, as Suge's reputation for violence and questionable business practices grew, Dr. Dre became more and more uncomfortable with their partnership. And eventually, Dr. Dre even left the record label, becoming his own separate entity, and eventually forming his own label. Of course, there were several incidents that led to their falling out, but Dr. Dre never wavered in his stance against Suge Knight and never let himself be intimidated by him. In fact, there have been rumors that Suge Knight was almost killed by a hit put out by Dr. Dre himself. Though Suge Knight has claimed that this wasn't the case, and the two used to be good friends. The streets know that Dr. Dre was not afraid to stand up against Suge Knight and even made moves against him when necessary. Number 4, Snoop Dogg. This might be a shocker for some fans, because Snoop Dogg used to work with the Death Row Records crew and Suge Knight himself, but his loyalty was always to himself first and foremost. Despite being signed to Death Row Records and being under Suge Knight's wing, Snoop never truly trusted Suge and saw him as the ultimate enemy. Their relationship only became more tumultuous over the years, with Snoop eventually leaving Death Row Records for Master P's No Limit Records. And when Suge was locked up for 6 years, Snoop made sure to turn against him and diss him on tracks like Pimp Slapped. Though they eventually reconciled in 2005, it's clear that Snoop was never truly afraid of Suge Knight and never let him control him or his career. If anything, the fact that Suge Knight had claimed previously that he had scores to settle but never made good on his threats should show that he's intimidated by Snoop and his crew.